Hi, I'm Sam Balaton-Chrimes.
And I'm Alice Billette.
This episode of Welcome is the second in a two-part episode where I talk with Kenyan novelist Yvonne Adhiambo Owuor. If you haven't already, head on over to our feed and listen to the first part. In the Dragonfly Sea, Yvonne writes about the different ways in which foreigners behave. Some are gracious, others awkward, some reluctant, others arrogant, but always human. She read for me a passage I found particularly funny. It's about development workers and mainland Kenyan elites delivering development to Pate Islanders in the form of a well for drawing water.
When the well was ready, which was 8 months ago, they had launched it with half-hearted song and speeches in assorted English accents in front of delegations from the rest of the world. A garrulous military man whose coat had more metal than fabric had then led the ambassador to cut a large red bow stuck at the entrance to the well with blunt scissors. And when the first water was drawn from the well and offered to the ambassador to drink, he imbibed it, and truth dawned on him. His pained smile informed the islanders that he, too, had discovered what centuries of Pate Island dwellers already knew. Pate's underground water was foul, concentrated salt, and had been so for almost 300 years. After that day, this new well was not referred to again. However, the Boots were planning a new heart, soul, mind-winning project that would help Pate Islands help themselves. They were building a pit latrine where no pit latrine had ever been built before.
I love that passage. It's so familiar to me, the way in which they, these are other Kenyans too, like Kenyan and American soldiers, right? That they've rendered themselves foreign by not, as you put it, not respecting the ancient codes of hospitality.
Not bothering to do their basic research, frankly, Yes.
Exactly the way you put it. They neither asked nor were asked. Mm-hmm. There's another passage in Dust, which I think is another common way in which people render themselves foreign, if we're going to delve into the meanings of this term. But this one is more upsetting, I think more disturbing. Here, Yvonne reads a scene from Dust where the main character, Ajan, is in Nairobi in early 2008, not long after the post-election violence.
Ajan retreats into a restaurant to compose a newspaper item. She drinks milk-filled coffee and, pen in mouth, stares through a table of huddling black-suited men. 2 women looking silently into cups and another woman gesticulating. Updated, recycled post-election violence scenes on CNN. Panga-wielding Kenyans setting their country alight, explained in the voice of an Africa specialist from Louisiana, whose accent clangs all over his disapproval. Cut to news from tidy Anglo-Saxon worlds, a sequence of pretty, orderly spaces explained with tender adjectives. Sniggering from another table, Ajan overhears the tail end of a joke. We were terrified the country was going to the dogs, but it was worse. It was given to the Africans. She turns. The joker is a scruffy foreign correspondent type wearing scuffed leather sandals. His eyes carry the ravenous gawk of must-become authoritative protagonist of bad African happening types. His bespectacled companions are a droopy man, something of the I speak for Africa worthiness of Bono about him, and a woman with thigh-length brown hair whose painted nails are there to his tanned arm. Catching Ajan's look, she turns a brutal shade of violet. Shh, shh. She makes it sound foreign. The waiter says to them, "Anything else, sir?" He's unperturbed in a Nairobi way. "Surprise me," the look says. "Surprise me and witness my indifference."
I shouldn't laugh, it's tragic, really, but also familiar.
Yeah.
As the biggest city in East Africa, Nairobi, Kenya's capital, is a bit of a hub for the do-gooder types as well as the adventurers. The city attracts expats there to judge or to help. Some pride themselves on knowing the place so well they think they've earned the right to make racist jokes about it. These kinds of foreigners are always outsiders. Like the colonial British, they don't know how to behave as guests.
You kind of wonder why. What's the psychological process in place here to set yourself aside? So what? So what does that make you superior to what? To something that you've decided you're superior to? But that also means that you don't look within yourself and you don't understand that you're a caricature. You become a caricature of the human being. So this is my kind of like my poking into the eye of the kind of the development, social development, disastrous types that I had the misfortune of encountering.
Yvonne herself worked in the development sector for a while, but became rapidly disillusioned with it.
And perhaps it's my way of dealing with the loss of innocence. So then they will show up as villains. So, one of the best ways of getting revenge, you don't get revenge, you get even, turn them into characters.
I hope I don't see myself in it.
No, you of course, Sam. I said no. It's. Remember, I said they other themselves.
Yeah.
It's about also the I believe in I don't believe in the restricted nation state. I believe in the boundarylessness of like souls. So I hope I am of your tribe. I know you're of my tribe, and it's a kind of recognition based on the things that not only piss us off, but the things that we hope, the things we dream, they're the same kind of tears that we shed.
Yeah.
So my tribe has no nation, and we are many. Yeah.
We are many.
Yeah.
It can be hard to say those things, though, that we are of the same tribe. I don't feel like I'm like the expat journalists in the Nairobi bar, but I also don't want to erase or ignore the colonial past and how I've benefited from it by drowning it in my good intentions. I don't want to add to the burden of colonised people by also asking them to legitimate my place in their country. But I don't think it's that clear-cut. I don't think there are only those two types of people. I also believe in what Yvonne is saying and the connections that are possible despite it all. The terrain is tricky, but as humans connecting with other humans, maybe there are ways we can navigate it. Yeah, I think we are, certainly in Australia, also here in Africa, and I use the term Africa intentionally there because there is in this decolonising moment, there's this, there's a lot of policing.
Yes.
How African is this? Is this Afrocentric? There's policing around whiteness and so on, which I think, I think it has, it performs some important functions.
Mm-hmm.
But what I so enjoyed in reading your books was the lack of policing.
I'm so disinterested in the policing, especially because of where it comes from. I'm profoundly indifferent to that. I'm glad it shows in my work. Policing is one-dimensional compared to the relationships Yvonne portrays. But she's far from naive. She doesn't need to police because she shows how colonialism worked and how it still works. Yvonne reads here a short passage from Dust. I won't say too much about it, no spoilers here, but Hugh is a British settler in what they called the White Highlands in the 1950s, trying to make a new life in Kenya with his young wife. In time, whatever Hugh desired, he touched and claimed. The houseboy, my Kavirondo, the Waliangulu hunter, my tracker, the cook, my mpishi, the all-purpose repairman, my Indian fundi, the boatman, my Lamu oarsman, the dead elephant, my trophy, Kenya, my country, Celine, my wife. The character of Hugh, even though he's profoundly unlikable to me, but you also see he loves this country. Passionately, yes. He does.
To a
And there are
fault.
many. There are many. And again, these are people you run into. And when you obsess about the idea of starting again.
I admire Yvonne's graciousness here. She is, I think, generous toward this character, who I loathed for the way in which he thought he possessed Kenya and its people. It's because she sees Hugh as a person, not just a symbol of colonialism, as I did.
And this is also drawn from history. When I was in the archives in the Kenya National, you also love the archives, looking at the diaries of the administrators and some of the sentiments that kind of leached through the texts that were putting forward. Is the idea of Kenya. Kenya was a place of new beginnings. It was the place of rescue, the place of retreat of the hope. It was a place where England could retreat to and find another kind of imagination of itself after the war. So reading the contrasting, the post-war England was a hellish place. So and then there was this imagination of the Kenya that was, it was very specific to, I guess, the British imagination, but it was a kind of the imagination of nirvana, where you could start again. You could start a country again and do it right. And so when you read those diaries and you find these are diaries of human beings who are, who in so many ways have also a right, I think, as human beings to love a place. And just because I'm taking this political position, I do not have permission to deny them the right of that sentiment.
She insists on seeing all the complexity of the hues of the 1950s, at the same time as she calls out colonial settlement for what it was.
So I treat them as human beings and say, okay, these are the contradictions in which you find. These are the paradox in which you find yourself. You have projected another home in this place that's also occupied by others. But in your casting of another home in this place, you have no place for those who are actually the trustees of the landscape, which then takes me back to the question I asked earlier. Why was it so difficult? Well, why was it impossible for British culture to meet another in the space of hospitality and discovery? And what was lost by the idea of applying all those notions derived from the so-called age of reason, the colonialism, the capitalism, the imperialism, the nationalisms, and the cultural superiority,
It's such a poignant way of putting it that I'd never thought about in such an articulate way before. But why was it so difficult for them to approach other people and receive their hospitality?
Yes.
It's a beautiful way of putting the question. And it opens up, it does make it more human, and it does make us, I think, ask, what are we, when any of us move around and we go to new places, what are we looking for? And what are we willing to receive?
What are we willing to receive? And in the process of receiving, what are we afraid of giving up? Because change means compromising, and that compromising means giving up maybe an assumption or a presumption or a familiar position in order to be this more. Yes, you lose, but you become bigger.
Let me read this, or ask you to read.
Why don't you read as well? I love
hearing other people read your words.
Yes, I really do.
It would be my pleasure.
I really do prefer that.
Okay, so here we're encountering Mzee Kitwana Kipifit. Mzee is Swahili for old man. It's a title that shows respect. The character is of Chinese origin, but well and truly incorporated into Pate society. Kipifit is a play on words. He ran a lot, kept fit. Also, was I freaking out that my favourite author was about to hear me read her work? Yes. Did I love every second of it? Yes, I did. Pate Island had seeped into Mzee Kitwana Kipifit's soul. Now he was struggling with the question of leaving Pate. Every day he honoured the needs of the ghost sailors he now felt were his own. When he was not fishing, he tended to the tombs that he now suspected dated from the Tang dynasty era, not just the Ming, an older legacy. His shadow community. Looking after the tombs allowed him to believe he was atoning for the lost phantoms he had created through his previous work. Another time, another world. And every day he found another reason to linger. But he knew his self-distancing from China was not as complete as it could have been. With the violent arrival of crude military interlopers, he was stirred to act. In Pate, he thought, perhaps there was a way to secure a heritage of rightful belonging. His mind raced. So here there's a real human, and he's a rich character that I won't say too much about for people who will want to read the book. But he's making very human connections between China and Kenya in his relationships with people and his desire for that belonging, but also to maintain his Chinese-ness at the same time.
Mzee Kipifit was instrumental in identifying that Pate Island had people of Chinese descent, including Ayana, the main character. China's growing diplomatic and economic dominance in Africa is changing the face of the continent and leading some to wonder if it is the new imperial power or if things might be different this time.
The codes of hospitality we talked about, not in a perfect way, but they have applied that quite successfully. So it is, the conversations are about, we are in the same boat. We just managed to implement a couple of things and we can share our experiences with you in exchange for, these loans that are given without any questions.
Chinese aid in the region is rapidly outpacing traditional aid donors like the US.
But in turn, it also means some of our people will be coming to settle here. Again, it's fascinating that the settlement of the Chinese right across the continent and in Kenya, the fact that you can find persons of Chinese origin living in Mathare and living the daily life in Mathare, roasting maize, is fascinating in that it does mirror an older way of encountering and creating belonging in a faraway land. It's not violent. It's not full of myths of superiority
and separation.
Mathare is an informal settlement in Nairobi. It's not home to any white expats, but it is home to some Chinese immigrants.
But it's also the most effective means of gaining access and control, isn't it? Yes. And maybe those are how countries are formed. Maybe in 100 years, the dominant race in East Africa will be persons of... The thing is not just Chinese origin. People forget that. The gift of encounters also means that new races are formed. People fall in love.
Yes, they do.
Children are born. And other identities are always created. The fluidity of that, which is very obvious, certainly along the Swahili coast. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's so different. Like, it's so palpable in Nairobi. Wazungu visitors, white visitors, are so often associated with particular neighbourhoods, particular malls, that there is such a stark separation.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. That's not exactly what is happening. They have their Chinatowns and their places where they bring home here.
Right.
But yeah, there's an integration. It's a loaded word, but there's an integration that is so different from
what happened. But I think since you talk about the Wazungu neighborhoods, that's also divided in itself. So they're the 2-year wonders.
Yes.
And then there are those who are Kenyan citizens who actually use the Kenyan passport as a kind of badge of honor and really authenticity and belonging. Yes, and then there's separation.
Yeah.
So that too is also wonderfully divided. Yes.
Yeah, the staying and the leaving is another theme that I think is really interesting in the book, and this issue of time and duration. If you don't stay and if you don't return, then how much you understand and how much you can connect on that human level is constrained, I think. Yeah. Is that a theme that you consciously?
No, not consciously, I guess, because I think it's my own struggle. Yeah, my peripatetic existence, which I used to resist. I've just succumbed to it and saying, fine, I'm a migrant bird then. And the push and pull of home, the delight of entering new worlds and new places, running into members of the tribe, falling in love with places like Berlin, and even though people say, how could you, as if I've betrayed the universe, I said, I can't help it. It's not my fault. It's a place.
Yeah. It's that policing again that, these are the places you're allowed to feel you belong, and these are the places you are not allowed to.
You're not allowed. I've been trying this card. I said, well, I can't help it. It's not my fault. Yeah. It happened. I like Berlin. So what?
And it's a very universal thing for people to want to travel and to fall in love with place.
But I've got nomadic antecedents. I've got nomadic ancestors. So the idea of the, what do you call it, the fluidity and flexibility of place and home is in my DNA. That's one. But the second thing is I think I put a phrase out. I found a cutting where a nomad from Kenya who was in Ethiopia, who had ended up in Somalia with his cattle. He says that whatever place provides me with pasture and food and shelter for my art, for my cattle, is my home. So for me, whatever place gives shelter and food and nurture to my art is my home.
That's beautiful. Okay, well, we might have to finish up. I'm so reluctant to. I feel like we could talk forever. I still have so many passages I would love to hear you read. But so I guess I will just finish by thanking you for your hospitality and for opening up your art and your thoughts and your dreams and your reflections with us. It's been such a privilege. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Samantha. Thank you for your questions as well. Thank you for their incisive nature. So yes, thank you. It's been a privilege and pleasure as well. Yes,
the privilege is all mine. Okay.
The Welcome podcast is based in Naarm, on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Naarm is more commonly known as Melbourne, Australia.
This episode was produced by me, Dr. Sam Balaton-Chrimes. It was recorded at Zamar Studios in Nairobi.
Script supervision and editing by James Milsom.
Theme music composed by John Bartley. Special thanks to Nazanin Zeta Cummings and Samuel Juguna.
If you like this show and haven't already, please subscribe, rate and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to us. It helps spread the word about the show and we really appreciate it.